Well, before I get into it, I better ask everyone's opinions and impressions of my t-shirt that I'm wearing today, because half the people who watch my videos seem to only do it to criticise the fashion that I am sporting, as opposed to the boxing that I'm actually talking about. So I hope the t-shirt doesn't offend anyone. I was going to do the video topless as a sort of middle finger to everyone who'd slated my beautiful jumper so much. But to be honest, I don't think my ego could take the criticism that my physique would no doubt generate. So I've put on this rather fetching V-neck number for you all. Anyway, enough about fashion. Let's get to the matter at hand. World War III has been announced by Frank Warren. No, not England versus Germany again. He's actually got 3 world title fights on the same bill, headlined by Andy Lee versus Billy Joe Saunders. Also with Liam Smith versus Michael Soro, and Terry Flanagan versus Diego Magdaleno. Now, let me start by talking about the main event. Essentially, the fight was supposed to be held, I believe, in Tipperary, in a massive stadium, big fight in Ireland. Andy Lee has, by all accounts, caught a virus which would make him unable to defend for that date, and as a result they've had to push it back by 2 or 3 weeks or whatever it is, in order to, have Andy Lee at full tilt. Now, what was odd is you'd have to assume that in order to delay a fight of this magnitude, the virus would have to be pretty bad. I kind of assumed that Andy Lee would be at home resting and recuperating, but no, he flew over and was there for today's press conference. I didn't watch the whole press conference. I haven't seen any of the interviews that no doubt followed with Andy Lee, but to my very uneducated eye, and as to why I would say full disclosure, I am certainly not a doctor, Andy Lee didn't exactly look like the kind of guy who was at death's door with a virus, shall I say. There's been a lot of rumour on the internet, a lot of speculation that the fight was cancelled due to poor ticket sales. And obviously that would be very unpopular if true, as many fans will have paid substantial amounts of money on flights to go out to Tipperary to watch the fight. So I certainly hope that's not the case. I was watching another YouTube channel, it might have even been my good friend Ultratech Sports, who was saying that he'd seen Andy Lee at a barbecue on Twitter or something, and now Andy Lee appears at the press conference. Either way, I'm sure this virus was pretty bad, but it doesn't seem to have been bad enough to fully make Andy Lee bedridden, so you can draw your own conclusions there. Nevertheless, it's clearly an enticing main event. It really is a 50-50 matchup. If you've been following my channel for a while, you know that I'm a big Billy Joe Saunders fan, and I'm picking Billy Joe to beat Andy Lee. But nevertheless, it's a really fascinating fight, and for me, I think it falls down to one thing. I mean, I have no doubt that Billy Joe Saunders will outbox Andy Lee early on, no doubt. And what this relates to, yet again, is Andy Lee's equalising power versus Billy Joe Saunders' tendency to fade late in fights. I mean, we've seen, to be honest, we've seen Andy Lee get outboxed over the first half of fights in all of his last 3 fights. Matt Korobov, John Jackson, Peter Quillen. Every time he's been badly behind on the scorecards after 6 rounds. But every time he's managed to come back, he's managed to find something to get the job done. Knocking out Korobov, knocking out John Jackson, and flooring Peter Quillen. So the question is, we know that equalising power is going to be there from Andy Lee. We also know that, Billy Joe, certainly in the John Ryder fight, arguably in the Nick Blackwell fight, certainly in the Eubank Jr. fight, became tired. Didn't look like the best conditioned in the later rounds. And yet again, Billy Joe, from where I'm sitting, he doesn't look to be in the most athletic of physical conditions at this stage. So, yeah, I mean, that's the theme for that fight. It's a very interesting dynamic. I've got Saunders 5 or 6 rounds up after, 6-7 rounds here. I think Saunders is going to win the early rounds, if I'm honest, with ease. The question is going to be, will he last out? On the balance of probabilities, I'm going to say he probably will. I think Billy Joe's smart, defensive, and have got high ring IQ. And I think all of those years of being unfit and being badly conditioned means he knows how to survive. I'm picking Billy Joe, but I can see why it would be easy to pick Andy Lee, and it is a genuine 50-50. Liam Smith versus Michael Soro. I mean, Frank Warren's got a knack of doing this. I think he's done it recently with, well, to a lesser extent, Derry Matthews, but certainly Terry Flanagan. A fighter who isn't really a globally recognised star or a huge name even. Liam Smith, we know him in the boxing hardcore, mainly because of his association with the Smith brothers, if you like. But, Liam Smith is not a huge name globally. And light middleweight, some huge names in that division. Obviously, you got the likes of Canelo, Lara, you could say Austin Trout, the Charlo brothers. I could go on. There's some big names in that division. Yet somehow Frank Warren has managed to navigate his man to a title fight where, it's a winnable fight. It's a very winnable fight. It's exactly the same actually with Frank Buglioni. Some of the biggest names in boxing in that division. Some hugely long-established champs who are far superior fighters at this stage to Buglioni. Yet somehow Frank Warren's managed to find a gap in order to get his man a shot. It worked with Terry Flanagan. Credit to Warren for that. Let's see if it works for Liam Smith. Michael Soro, I'm not going to pretend I've watched his entire back catalogue, but one would presume it's a more winnable fight than certainly fighting the likes of a Canelo or a Erislandy Lara. So fair play to Frank Warren on that. I know a tiny bit about Soro, largely because I was having a chat with one of the subscribers here about his fight with Emmanuel Blandamura at the time. Blandamura, who he stopped in, I think it was 8 rounds, was an impressive victory for me because he went Blandamura. I've seen Blandamura fight against Billy Joe Saunders, and he seemed to have some capability. Also, he stopped Glenn Tapia, I think, in a few rounds, something like 3 rounds maybe. So, this Soro brings some credibility. Boxrec have him at number 11 at middleweight, which is pretty high, to be ranked 11 at middleweight. And some of the names on his resume, Blandamura, Tapia, you could argue his resume is actually more impressive than Liam Smith. I mean, let's not forget, 5 or 6 fights ago, Liam Smith was fighting the Eric Osiangs and the Steve O'Mearas of this world. So for me, this is a step up. For me, it's against an opponent who's, as I say, he can make middleweight. His opponent has made middleweight relatively recently. But we're talking about a guy who's been fighting at 160, been fighting, a relative name, I guess, in Emmanuel Blandamura at 160, and a guy who Boxrec have as high as just outside the top 10 at 160. Yet here we are at 154. Soro doesn't seem to be like this astronomical puncher, but nevertheless, we're talking about a guy who gets knockouts at middleweight, fighting at 154. So, for me, it's a tough matchup. Soro comes to the ring, 27 wins, 1 draw, 1 loss. His draw and his loss both come, obviously the draw did, but his loss came by points. There is a sneaking suspicion that he can be outboxed. I'd need to watch some more of him, and probably need to watch more of Liam Smith to come up with a full breakdown of how I see this fight going. But Soro seems like a relatively durable type of character, never been stopped, gone the distance several times as I understand it. And as I say, he's obviously a big guy at the weight. So it's a tough fight for Liam Smith. Don't get me wrong, it's probably the easiest fight out there for him in terms of winning a world title. But nevertheless, a tough fight. So looking forward to that one as well. Finally, Terry Flanagan versus Diego Magdaleno. Magdaleno 28-1, so a reasonable good record. His only loss comes to Roman Martinez, which was the division below, coincidentally, in a split decision. I think the theme of this fight, and I'll touch on it very briefly. Magdaleno's not a big puncher. He's got a very, very low KO percentage, even at the lower weight. I forget exactly what his KO percentage is, but let's say it's below 50%. So he's coming up in weight. It's likely that someone who isn't a big puncher the weight class below is probably still not going to be a big puncher at lightweight. Obviously, Terry Flanagan isn't the biggest puncher in the world either. Magdalena's a southpaw, as I understand it. This could be one for the purists here. This could be your classic game of chess style defence. You'd assume Frank Warren has picked him out on the basis that he can be outboxed. Obviously you want a fairly comfortable defence for Terry Flanagan ahead of some bigger matchups against the UK domestic names at lightweight. But we'll soon find out, won't we? And it's a potentially interesting matchup, this. As I say, I think it could be a game of chess. Two guys, southpaw with Magdalena, as I say, two guys who don't carry a lot of power, and we'll see how it goes. But yeah, I think the card it's a very, very good card. It's a very good card. Billy Joe Saunders versus Andy Lee is an excellent headliner. I think there's going to be some of the Warren names on the undercard. Liam Watts, who's a fighter I'm a huge fan of, need to start seeing Liam Watts in some bigger fights. He's been stagnating at this middle level for so long now, and he's clearly capable of more in my eyes. So it's a really good card. Just when Box Nation are really up against it, no Eubank Saunders, no Tyson Fury Klitschko. Something gets pulled out of the bag. This is a major shot in the arm. I guess the concern is, does this card have crossover appeal? Are the casuals going to be tuning in to watch this? Probably not. Some of them will, but the real casuals won't be. There isn't a name like a Eubank or a Fury on this to really generate that interest. And Saunders versus Lee is very courteous at the moment. Not too much bad blood. Don't get me wrong, that's not a bad thing, but yeah, a bit of bad blood always helps to build these things. So that's my thoughts. Credit to Frank Warren. He's done a good job on Liam Smith in the end. Who'd have thought at one point the way Eddie Hearn was going with the brothers, Paul Smith versus Arthur Abraham, Callum Smith rated so highly, Stephen Smith being #1 in the world or whatever. Who'd have thought it could be beefy Liam Smith with Frank Warren, who could be most likely the first Smith brother with a world title. Let me know your thoughts on this card. Will you be going? Which fights are you most looking forward to? I'm laying my cards on the table. I'm most looking forward to the main event. Thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed the video and hope you enjoyed the teaser.